This is the Literacy Mindset Podcast, where education leaders discuss identifying and removing phonological barriers with Mindplay's CEO, Jeff Pendleton.
Okay, everyone, welcome back. We have another episode as part of our Oklahoma mini-series here. Mr. Richard Kirksey, who is the newly appointed principal at Moreland High School in Moreland, Oklahoma. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you on and talk about some of the great things that we've been sort of trying to highlight in the state of Oklahoma. Let's see. Moreland, can you help orient us a little bit where we at in the state?
So if you head west out of Oklahoma City, just a couple hours, we're right before the Panhandle.
Okay.
And so closest large city is probably Woodward, Oklahoma. About 10 minutes east of that.
Just outside of Woodward. Okay.
Yep.
Small town.
Yes.
A small district. About 500-600 kids. Does that sound right?
Yep. Just about 5.25. We're looking at, I believe, about 518 coming up this school year.
Got it. Okay, so you got a K-6 building, got a 712 building, kind of operate that way. Awesome. Can you just orient the audience a little bit to you, how it is that you got in this newly appointed role? Really excited for you to take on this principalship, but walk us through the little bit of the story of how Richard got to where he's at.
Okay. So for me, education has always been, my parents pounded it into my head. And when I got out of college, a buddy of mine said, "Hey, do you want to come to the school and coach with me?" And I said, "Dude, I'm not going to go into education. I'm not going to make any money there." And along the way of living that corporate life, I ran into a buddy when we moved out to Moreland about 15 years ago that asked if I wanted to teach a Photoshop class. Just a nighttime deal. I was still doing graphic and web design, and that turned into the opportunity to teach a multimedia class for the tech center. And then that turned into the opportunity of speaking with the admin and the teachers in Moreland. My own kids go here in Moreland.
Okay.
And that turned into here's the path that we need to take to make that change. And it has always been a student-centered focus of mine. If I'm going to go do something, then it needs to make a difference for the students. And thankfully with this, I can do that with a larger group of students. I always loved that my class was my class. And when we succeeded as a class, they succeeded in ways that were incredible to see. And so being able to do that with a class that is as large as our school at this point is just one of those things that keeps pushing you.
Right.
So that's where we are now.
Excellent. I think it's an eclectic background. It's a bit unique. And so let's talk about that for a second. As you think about maybe the corporate side of the world where you experience things, obviously you have a large creative arm, been in the creative side, started teaching Photoshop. That's not necessarily a common route of getting into public K-12 education, thinking of teaching Photoshop. So what is it that you think your background provides you with an opportunity as you now get this chance to instill sort of a literacy culture or a reading culture? What have you seen in your career? What are the things that you think will influence you as you kind of move forward instituting a reading culture?
Okay. So, and this has always been one of those things that if you're creative, your job is to tell a story, and to tell a story that makes sense for people, that they want to buy whatever it is you're selling. And so that immediately turns into, okay, so if I can tell that story, then I can lead the class on this. And that's in my first days of teaching, because you go, what am I doing?
Right.
How am I going to do this? And knowing that you've got to tell that story, and you've got to tell it in a way that makes sense for people so that they understand it. That leads into our literacy mindset at Moreland is we're going to make reading, or we're going to attempt to make reading one of those areas where it makes sense, not just because you need to get a grade, but because you see the value in it, you see the long term, you see the entertainment in it, and to provide that avenue so that a student who learns to read today gets to go do the different opportunities they want to do because they know they have the knowledge moving forward.
Right. Yeah, that I love that. Thinking about, the story that we tell as a leader, that's an important part of the culture of your building. So let's talk about intervention a little bit, because intervention tends to be where some of the focus is in grade 7 through 12. Obviously, the prevention or early detection of reading challenges comes earlier. You don't get that luxury as often in the 7 through 12. You're more of a whoops, we have some challenges and we have to figure out what to do with them. In particular, I think that there are times when phonological gaps or other comprehension gaps sort of sits in the foundational skills side of the world, but happens or at least is discovered later in the student's journey. What do you guys do? What have you been doing with this new lens? What do you think you might do moving forward? Can you walk us through just how you're going to be thinking about intervention now?
Absolutely. So where we stand now is you have, we've got our 3 English teachers in our 7 through 12 building.
Okay.
And their thought processes, we've got a brand new one coming in this year. And so we'll work them into the mindset. But for the 2 that were here last year, their thought has always been, we need to make this fun. We need to make this a spot where we can have some energy and have some excitement with the actual reading that's going on. And so when they do those things, they can see on the back end what didn't make sense. So I'll give an example. For our high school English teacher, she will put kind of events that go along with the reading that happened.
Okay.
And with that, she can start to see if when you, for instance, she did a meal that went along with the book that she did for the class. If what you're putting in to the project for the meal has nothing to do with the book, where are we falling short? What are we missing on those spots? And so then they can take and again, because we have only a 2 1/4 in the building,
right?
She can take time with those individual students and say, okay, so what didn't make sense? Where are we headed? What in the long run did you not understand about the reading that we did? And beyond that, we have an amazing special education teacher that has an open class every hour, so that when kids do need a little more assistance on catching up with the reading, figuring out where we messed up, working within an IEP, they can come into that classroom, get individualized help, and then try to make their way back in to catch up with what was missed. And so right now that system has been one of those that visually you can see that some students who weren't getting it ahead of, before are starting to understand it. But as every school does, we are flexible and will evolve. And so now is one of those times where we sit down as a group and say, what technologies do we have available to us? We've got different programs that we use now to do testing ahead of time to see where we are.
Right.
But it'll be, what testing can we put in? What programs can we put in that won't only just tell us, here's your grade level, here's where you read, here's what you're missing, but rather an individualized approach to, here's how we get you there. And so we've looked at several programs. We'll see if we can implement any of them this year and see how, in a school our size, the goal would be individualized as much as possible learning for every student.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to ask you that just as you described 2.25 small building. What are the advantages that you get to take advantage of as a small school, and then maybe what are some of the challenges that exist that you're sort of working up against on a pretty regular basis? Can you walk us through those?
Absolutely. So one of the great advantages to our school and our community is that it is so small. We have several teachers who have students in the building,
Okay.
whether they're in the elementary or they're in the high school. And with that, they live in town. Their students' parents are neighbors. It is a small enough town that you're going to know most of the parents who are sending their kids to school.
Okay.
That is both a advantage and a challenge at times. When a student is showing success, it's a great advantage because you can talk to those parents and you can say, hey, here's what's going on. But as parents, we want our kids to do as best as they can possibly do at all times. And when you walk up to a parent that you know and have to say, here's where your student is falling behind, sometimes that can turn into, well, you just don't like my student.
Right.
And that is a human trait that will always be there. But with that is you get to take the time to have discussions with those parents to figure out what is actually missing. So one of those things I learned when I first got into education, if you have a parent who goes home and sits down with their student and reads every night and then helps with homework, even when it's, I'm going to speak from my own experience, 10:30 and you get hey, I didn't do my homework.
Right.
And you're up until midnight trying to help with homework. Those little interactions lead to a little bit more confident success. We all know that. When you have to tell a parent, these are the things that your child is missing, it's hard to hear from somebody who your kids all play football and pee-wee together. But it also leads into a conversation of, I'm not just doing this because I don't like your kid. I'm
Right.
doing this because here in this town, we're a community. We want to see everyone succeed. And so those challenges of being a small town, it's fun at a football game when you have an entire community try to show up, or a basketball game, and somebody who is not related to the student is worried about the reading scores that they saw on the state report card, or this that they saw. It just means that as a town, we want everyone to succeed. And that's a rare thing to experience and to find.
Yeah, and certainly something that would be quite difficult to replicate in larger communities. It just it is the way that we exist. Okay, let's see. You also are, you probably bring a bit of a technologist lens to this. Teaching Photoshop is your first thing, graphic artist and designer. And what does technology look like in Moreland? Is it something that you use heavily? Do you try and avoid using it at some level? How do you think about, how do you orient yourself around that?
It is, this will be the challenge, maybe of just generationally, but the want to bring in as much technology as possible, because this is what is going to help. With my own son, I remember there was an app when he was little that you would just drag the letter and it would make the sound of the letter. And when you put it there, it would help spell the word out. And he grasped those concepts really quickly. But that was also a lot of iPad time. And so as that's going to be the double-edged sword of all time, is how do you present, and this is what we'll continue to look at, how do you present the technology that can and will provide that individualized attention, but at the same time, don't just bring a student into the school and say, here's your Chromebook. We'll see you in 2 hours,
Right.
and then move on. For me, bringing in as much technology as possible, as long as it's vetted through our teachers, so that it's comfortable,
Right.
tested, so that we're, again, not just bringing something in and then 2 years from now go, oh my gosh, that was a horrible idea. Now there
There
will
may be
be,
that, but
yes, there will always be some of those, but taking the time to look at some stuff and say, okay, why is this necessary? Again, we spoke a little earlier. My brain goes big picture a lot. Where I said, we're going to be the number one school in the state, and we're going to do this, and it's going to be this, and every kid's going to read by this, and you have to have a path to get there.
sure.
And so, and especially in this first year, taking those small steps and looking at what we have, sitting down with the teachers. Our staff is amazing. I proposed a June 11th, I think it was, meeting after they've been done for a couple weeks, to just sit down and chat about where we are as a school, where we want to go, where we're headed.
Right.
And we had a large amount of teachers just show they weren't getting paid. Now, we did make some lasagna for them and some salad.
Hey,
So
It's
that may
not
have been it.
common to fill for lasagna.
But their passion for teaching was evident on that day. And
Right.
so any technology we bring in, we're going to work with our teachers to say, here's what we think it could do. Here's where we think it could help. And they bring a lot to the table in terms of technology themselves and say, hey, I saw this. What do we think?
Right.
And we have a superintendent who is forward thinking enough to say, let's figure out if we can make this work. So just a good crew that wants to see people succeed.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, that's a big part of it. Okay. Let's see. As we kind of maybe wind down here a little bit, I always like to get forward thinking in our conversation. What worries you the most about the future of education?
In Oklahoma, in the last couple of days, we've had a large amount of attention on the way things go in education. And I'm afraid that we don't always get the largest picture of here's how things work. As a non-parent, before I had my kids, you could see something and say, well, that's not right. And you don't get a lot of information. You don't do a deep dig and a dive into what's actually going on. And we have a large culture, digital culture now that, with great intentions, wants to push things forward without necessarily saying, what are all the details to this? And so, in some of the stuff we've experienced in Oklahoma in the last couple of weeks to things that we will probably see in the future, the biggest one will always be misinformation for me. And so
Okay.
I'm hoping that with multimedia background, the goal is to create that conversation with parents so that the school is not seen as a bad guy or a place where someone has to be, but rather
Right.
a partner and an opportunity to open doors later on down the road.
I love it. Okay. Well, lastly then, what excites you the most about the future of education?
Oh, the amount of knowledge that these kids have at this point is incredible. My first teacher that I worked with, he said, don't forget what you were like when you were in school. And I take that every day, and I know what I would have been doing when I was in school, in high school and in middle school. And some of the stuff that these students can do is amazing because they understand that every bit of knowledge is at their fingertips. We don't always know how to use it. We don't always use it well, but
Right.
the entire world is available to them. Every bit of knowledge is available to them. And that is both a scary and a exciting thought, because if you take the time to say anything I want to learn, there is zero stopping me from learning it. I have every opportunity in the world versus, well, something else will do it for me. That AI will take care of this for me. So that it's like watching a scary movie. You're waiting for the jump scare, but at the same time, you're like, this is a great movie. And I'm excited for the kids, my own kids included, to see how much will be done on that curve of knowledge and evolution in the next 20 years, because it's going to go so much faster than it did before.
Just how much can be accomplished when you have that much knowledge at your fingertips.
Yes.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Thank you for your time today. It's been excellent.
Thank you, Jeff.
I hope we have a chance to do it again soon.
Absolutely. Anytime.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to hear from you. Learn how we help students by identifying and removing phonological barriers at mindplay.com.